For thousands of years, the Galactic Empire dominated every known civilization, crushing opposition with overwhelming might. Yet, one species humans kept slipping through their grasp. Why did the Empire consider humans such a persistent anomaly despite their technological and numerical superiority?
The Empire was used to absolute compliance, but humans defied their expectations. Unlike other subjugated species, humans adapted rapidly and retaliated fiercely. Their refusal to yield, even when outmatched, became a unique problem the Empire couldn't solve with force alone, prompting a deeper investigation.
That sets the stage for a fascinating shift. The Empire, realizing brute strength was insufficient, initiated a new approach rooted in understanding and precision. How significant was this change in their overall military doctrine?
It was a paradigm shift. Rather than treating humans as just another obstacle, the Empire dedicated unprecedented resources to dissecting every aspect of human existence: biology, psychology, tactics, signaling a move from sheer oppression to calculated eradication.
To operationalize this new strategy, the Empire convened the first interstellar seminar focused solely on humanity's eradication. What was the scale and intent behind organizing such a monumental event?
The seminar was unprecedented in both scale and ambition. Invitations went out to every major military, scientific, and strategic leader, including subordinate species. The purpose was clear: to pool centuries of data and develop a universal doctrine for eliminating humans, a blueprint for galaxy-wide implementation.
The compulsory nature of attendance highlights the gravity the Empire placed on this issue. How did this affect morale and the sense of urgency among the attendees?
It fostered a sense of collective mission and inevitability. Attendees arrived eager, believing they'd finally uncover the key to a long-standing puzzle. The seminar became not just a learning forum, but a rallying point for imperial confidence.
One of the first focal points was human biology. The Empire labeled humans as fragile, short-lived, weak, and susceptible to injury. Can you break down the assumptions behind these characterizations?
Certainly. The Empire compared humans to apex predators and super-resilient species, finding humans lacking in almost every metric: moderate gravity adaptation, breakable bones, soft tissue, and average reflexes. They saw emotional volatility as an exploitable flaw, rather than a source of resilience.
It's intriguing how this led to tactical recommendations like targeting social bonds or cultural relics. Did the Empire underestimate the complexity of human emotional networks?
Absolutely. They mistook attachment for weakness, missing how social cohesion and sentimental values often fuel extraordinary acts of resistance and recovery, especially under existential threat.
Let's transition to technology. The Empire dissected human weapons, noting a reliance on projectile arms and adaptable armor. What flaws did they perceive in human military hardware and command structures?
They concluded that human ships, though agile, lacked the sheer firepower of imperial dreadnoughts. Their projectile-based weaponry was seen as outdated and adaptive armor as ultimately penetrable. The Empire also fixated on decapitation strikes, removing leaders to break organizational cohesion.
However, history shows human militaries often function well even after leadership losses. Did the Empire's analysis overlook decentralized tactics or redundant command protocols?
Precisely. The Empire's linear logic didn't account for human improvisation and the ability to rally around emergent leaders or collective decision-making in crisis scenarios.
The seminar delved deeply into human history, focusing on wars and internal divisions. What strategies did the Empire develop from this analysis?
They theorized that humans, prone to in-group loyalty but out-group hostility, could be manipulated into self-destruction. By amplifying national, ethnic, or ideological divides, the Empire aimed to trigger civil wars and factional strife, effectively letting humans erode themselves from within.
That's a classic divide-and-conquer approach. But did the Empire fully appreciate the ways humans can unite in the face of external threats?
Not entirely. While humans do fracture under certain pressures, existential threats have historically catalyzed unprecedented unity, as seen in World War II or during planetary crises, a nuance the Empire mostly ignored.
Shifting to human endurance, Empire analysts argued that humans couldn't withstand long-term deprivation, citing slow healing and seemingly limited stamina. How accurate were these conclusions?
The empire misread outlier survival feats like shipwreck survivors or polar explorers as statistical anomalies. In truth, humans possess extraordinary adaptability. They survive starvation, extreme temperatures, and psychological trauma better than most species, often due to creativity and communal support.
So, what are some real-world examples where human adaptability confounded expectations?
Consider the Apollo 13 mission-engineered solutions and teamwork overcame lethal odds. Or the 1914 Endurance expedition, where every crew member survived months in Antarctic isolation, defying all prior assumptions about human limits.
Empire strategists advocated for psychological warfare, orbital bombardments, targeting civilians, and spreading misinformation. What were the underlying assumptions about human morale and decision-making?
They believed breaking communal bonds and inflicting grief would force human surrender. The empire assumed that emotional pain equates to operational paralysis, overlooking how trauma often steals resolve and unites communities against a common enemy.
Could these tactics backfire and produce the opposite effect, essentially galvanizing resistance?
Absolutely. History is filled with examples like the London Blitz where civilian targeting backfired, transforming intended despair into collective defiance and bolstering war efforts instead of undermining them.
The seminar's protocols detailed isolating human fleets, dismantling supply chains, and fabricating betrayals. How did the empire envision these steps leading to total eradication?
They aimed for simultaneous assaults, physical and psychological, to overwhelm human systems. By cutting off support and seeding distrust, the empire hoped to induce chaos and collapse, believing human resilience was only surface deep and would shatter under pressure.
In your view, did these protocols account for the redundancy and improvisational skills humans often employ in decentralized warfare?
Not sufficiently. Human history, from resistance networks in occupied Europe to guerrilla warfare, shows an ability to adapt logistics and communication in the face of overwhelming odds, a critical oversight in the empire's playbook.
The empire also considered genetic and environmental warfare, designing bioweapons and atmospheric disruptors. What flaws existed in their scientific assumptions?
They underestimated human genetic diversity and immune adaptability. The notion that a single pathogen could wipe out humanity ignores the chaotic resilience of human biology. Similarly, they overlooked how humans have thrived in deserts, tundras, and even space-adapting environments to suit their needs.
Could you provide historical examples where humanity's adaptability defied expectations in hostile environments?
Certainly. From the early colonization of Siberia and the Sahara to the International Space Station, humans have consistently pushed the limits of survivability, often leveraging technology and ingenuity to overcome environmental extremes.
A key feature of the seminar was its overconfidence. The empire believed their new doctrine was flawless, but a silent figure, Baba Yaga, attended every session. How did the empire's hubris blind them to potential infiltration?
Their certainty led to complacency. Baba Yaga's unremarkable profile and quiet demeanor slipped through security, granting him access to every classified detail. The empire assumed full control, never considering that their greatest vulnerability was the very knowledge they so freely shared.
This scenario raises important questions about the risks of underestimating adversaries. How might this oversight ultimately reverse the empire's fortunes?
By handing a blueprint for their own undoing to the enemy. Baba Yaga's meticulous notes transformed the empire's manual for destruction into a roadmap for resistance, demonstrating how arrogance and tunnel vision can sow the seeds of downfall.
Reflecting on the seminar and its aftermath, what are the key lessons about strategic overconfidence and the underestimated power of human adaptability?
The empire's failure wasn't just in tactics, but in understanding the unpredictable creativity and unity adversity can inspire in humans. They mistook vulnerability for weakness, and in doing so, taught their enemy every flaw in their own strategy, cautionary tale in the dangers of underestimating opponents.
As history often shows, knowledge is a double-edged sword. What might this mean for future conflicts where asymmetric information and adaptability play a decisive role?
It underscores the importance of humility and perpetual learning. In any conflict, the side that adapts faster, leveraging both its own strengths and its adversary's blind spots, shows the long-term advantage. That's the true lesson from the Empire's failed seminar.
Let's start with the moment the Empire's sense of invincibility cracked the assassination of Grand Admiral Selvaris. Imagine being at the height of your power only to lose your top strategist in a way that defies all logic. No forced entry, no evidence, not even a whisper on Surveillancia surgical strikes so flawless, it borders on the supernatural. Beside Selvaris' body, a symbol, a hut perched on chicken legs. Odd, right? You'd expect an assassin's calling card to scream intimidation. Instead, investigators are left with a puzzleno connections, no database matches, nothing to trace. Now, you might be thinking, is this just a one-off, a random act of violence? The Empire certainly believes so. They wrote it off as a minor retaliation, tightened security, and moved on. But here's the kicker. This wasn't just a death, it was the first move in a game the Empire didn't even know was playing. The symbol was a signature, a warning, and a mystery all rolled into one. Let me ask you, if your enemy leaves a riddle at the scene, do you dismiss it or start questioning every assumption you've ever made about control? Days later, lightning strikes again. This time, High Inquisitor Drellic, mastermind of psychological warfare, is found dead in his private dreadnought quarters. The setting? Maximum security, guards, biolocks, state-of-the-art monitoring, what we'd call multi-layered defense in cybersecurity. But the assassin breezes through every barrier as if security measures were mere illusions. Again, the chicken-legged hut is scrawled at the scene. Picture the Empire's top brass huddled in panic. If their most fortified spaces can be breached, what does that say about the rest of their infrastructure? It's like discovering your supposedly uncrackable bank vault has a secret revolving door. Now, you might ask, were these attacks the work of a superhuman? An insider with access codes? The truth is even more unsettling. No evidence suggests any plausible route in or out. Here's the resolution. The Empire's belief in its own invulnerability is the first casualty. Their security theater is exposed as exactly that, a performance, easily bypassed by someone who knows the script. As the bodies pile up, a chilling pattern appears. Every victim attended the notorious seminar on killing humans. Suddenly, what seemed like isolated incidents become a targeted purge. Let me tell you, in intelligence analysis, we call this a kill chain systematic elimination of key assets based on shared exposure. The variation in methods, some poisoned, some vanished, some left in locked room, adds to the terror. The outcome, though, is always the same. No alarms, no resistance, only the ever-present symbol. Now, imagine being an Imperial officer. Do you start skipping meetings? Do you trust your own protocols? Paranoia spreads like a virus, eroding cohesion. You might be thinking, surely, with all their technology, they can stop this. But every tool biometric locks, quantum surveillance, predictive analytics proves useless. Resolution? The Empire's leadership realizes far too late that they've painted targets on their own backs. The seminar was a fatal Aurora shared vulnerability made public and now exploited. Desperation drives Empire analysts to scour every archive, hunting for the meaning of the hut on chicken legs. Finally, a clue. Baba Yaga, an ancient human myth, a witch who hunts and devours, unstoppable and feared. But here's the irony. The Empire's scholars dismiss it as superstition. To them, cultural semiotic symbols with historical power, irrelevant in a universe governed by logic and data. Let me pose a question. How often do societies underestimate the psychological warfare of myth? It's like ignoring the power of propaganda or underestimating brand influence in business. Now, you might say, but myths can't kill. True, but belief shapes fear, and fear can be more paralyzing than any weapon. Resolution arrives as the Empire's inability to decode the symbol becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. What they cannot understand, they cannot defend against. With every new assassination, the Empire doubles down. More hunter teams, tighter surveillance, and a deluge of Directive Sol classic counterinsurgency tactics. But the killer, now whispered as Baba Yaga, remains a phantom. Every hunter team disappears, every trap fails. It's a perfect demonstration of asymmetric warfare where a technically weaker opponent exploits the bureaucracy and overconfidence of a stronger foe. If you're rooting for the Empire, you might ask, why not use advanced AI to predict Baba Yaga's moves? They try, but encounter the adversarial environment problem. The more rigid the system, the easier it is to manipulate. So, the empires show a force only heightens their vulnerability. Their responses are anticipated, mirrored, and neutralized. Resolution. The empire learns too late that brute force is useless when your enemy is everywhere and nowhere, turning every countermeasure into an opportunity. As assassination fear spirals, empire officials abandon posts, war councils dwindle, and exiles scatter to distant worlds. This isn't just operational disruption, it's the breakdown of social trust, a key factor in organizational resilience. Why? Because every fortress, every secret hideaway is breached without fail. It's like playing chess with an opponent who knows your moves in advance. The psychological effect? Total destabilization. Let me ask, if you can't trust your own defenses, do you trust your colleagues? Many don't. They isolate themselves, convinced that solitude equals safety, but isolation just makes them easier prey. Now you might wonder, couldn't they coordinate a united defense? In theory, yes, but in practice, fear breeds suspicion, and suspicion destroys alliances. Resolution. Baba Yaga's real weapon isn't violence, it's the engineered collapse of collective confidence, a slow-motion implosion of empire unity. Here's the ultimate twist. Baba Yaga attended the seminar. He learned their anti-human strategies, absorbed every tactic, every method. The empire, in its arrogance, handed him the keys to his own undoing. Let's break down two core concepts, reverse engineering and social engineering. Baba Yaga reverse engineers their defensive playbook and uses social engineering, manipulating trust and perception to bypass every safeguard. Now, you might protest. Surely their own methods can't be used against them. But that's the crux. When you underestimate your opponent, you create blind spots. The Empire's psychological tactics are mirrored back with devastating precision. Imagine being outsmarted by your own training manual. Every trick you taught your officers now works against you because your enemy knows your every move. Resolution. The Empire's intellectual hubris becomes its greatest weakness. Knowledge intended for conquest becomes the seed of its destruction. With paranoia rampant, the Empire's intelligence networks implode. Every report, every intercepted message tainted by misinformation. Baba Yaga manipulates their infosphere, feeding false leads and orchestrating diversions. Two technical terms here, signal-to-noise ratio and information cascade. The Empire's signal-the-truthist, drowned out by a surge of noise-fabricated threats, fake sightings, and planted evidence. If you're analyzing this, you might ask, can't they filter the noise? In theory, yes. In practice, the volume is overwhelming, and every misstep leads to catastrophic redeployments, key worlds left undefended, vital outposts abandoned. Let me tell you a story. Whole fleets are sent on wild goose chases, chasing phantoms while Baba Yaga strikes where they're weakest. Resolution. The Empire's own intelligence apparatus becomes a weapon against itself, sowing chaos and hastening its unraveling. Baba Yaga's campaign evolves. He targets not just strategists, but cultural icons, propagandists, and the architects of the Empire's anti-human narrative. The goal? Demoralization on a grand scale. Two psychological concepts come into play. Symbolic violence, the destruction of meaning rather than just material and learned helplessness, where repeated failures breed surrender. Now, you might wonder, can a few targeted killings really shatter an empire's spirit? The answer, absolutely. When every loss feels inevitable and every symbol of power is defaced or destroyed. Imagine seeing statues topple, archives corrupted, monuments razed all with the same signature. It's not just about loss, it's about erasing the empire's very identity. Resolution. Baba Yaga weaponizes fear and symbolism, undermining morale until resistance becomes unthinkable. In the final act, the empire crumbles not under bombardment, but under the weight of myth. Soldiers mutiny, commanders flee, entire divisions refuse orders. The fear of Baba Yaga outweighs all imperial authority. Let's explore two final concepts. Systemic collapse, where failures in one part cascade through the whole system, and mimetic warfare, where ideas, not just weapons, break the enemy's will. You might ask, couldn't the empire just erase the legend? They try purging records, silencing witnesses, but the myth has already spread, fueled by every failed attempt to stop him. Let me leave you with this. Baba Yaga started as a human, became a legend, and ended as a force of nature. The empire's arrogance, its overconfidence, became the very tools of its undoing. Resolution. In the end, it wasn't fleets or firepower that felled the empire rate, was the unstoppable spread of fear, the rewriting of reality by a single, shadowy figure who understood that the greatest weapon is the mind.
The Galactic Empire's final strategy dissolved as its leadership scattered in desperation, each high-ranking official convinced they would be the next target. Communication chains broke under the weight of paranoia, as commanders refused to trust even their closest allies. Entire sectors operated independently, severing ties with the central authority, fearing that association with the Empire's core would invite Baba Yaga's wrath. The Empire's power, once centralized and absolute, fragmented into isolated pockets of terrified rulers waiting for the inevitable. The Supreme Chancellor's last attempt to regroup the remaining fleets ended before it could begin. The commanders he summoned never arrived. Their ships were found abandoned, their crews vanished without a trace. The only clue left behind was a symbol they had all come to dread, a small hut perched on chicken legs. Fear spread faster than the Empire could contain it. Systems shut down their ports, refusing to allow any vessels entry. Trade ceased. Military supply chains disintegrated. Fear alone became Baba Yaga's most potent weapon, crippling the Empire without firing a single shot. The Chancellor ordered the construction of impregnable strongholds, but each fell with terrifying precision. Automated defenses were bypassed. Armored gates were left wide open. Internal security logs showed no breaches, no intrusions, no physical evidence of how the assassinations occurred. It was as if Baba Yaga walked through walls, as if the very concept of security had ceased to apply. The Empire's top engineers failed to understand how every lock, every safeguard, every calculated defense failed at the exact moment it was needed. Across the outer systems, colonies began openly declaring neutrality, some even swearing fealty to human enclaves that now expanded rapidly without resistance. The Empire, once feared, found itself shunned. Former allies severed diplomatic relations, vassal states proclaimed independence, and former subjugated species rose in rebellion, emboldened by the Empire's paralyzing fear. Where once legions would crush defiance, now silence echoed, as battle groups refused deployment. Commanders ignored summons, and soldiers abandoned their posts. Baba Yaga's message arrived in the heart of the Empire, without interception. A simple broadcast transmitted across every frequency, translated into every known galactic language. It was brief. It contained no threats, no ultimatums. Just a reminder. You taught me. You taught all of us. We listened. Panic overtook the remaining leadership. The implications were clear. Humanity had been gifted the Empire's entire war doctrine, its strategies, its assumptions, its weaknesses, all shared willingly during the seminar. What was intended to destroy humanity had instead armed them with the most intimate knowledge of the Empire's operational structure. The Empire's internal systems collapsed under the weight of their own defenses. Automated security networks turned against their operators. Communications scrambled themselves into unreadable fragments. Strategic databases were wiped clean. Key logistical hubs spontaneously shut down, rendering entire fleets useless. The Empire's digital infrastructure had been compromised beyond recovery. Every attempt to regain control failed. Every system that the Empire trusted betrayed them. The fracturing accelerated. Fleet commanders, convinced they had been specifically marked for death, initiated self-destructive protocols, scuttling their own ships rather than allowing them to fall into enemy hands. Intelligence directors erased entire archives in an effort to deny Baba Yaga further access, not realizing he had already taken what he needed. Entire sectors went dark as regional governors severed all contact, choosing to operate as independent warlords rather than submit to a leadership that could no longer protect them. Within the core worlds, civil unrest erupted as citizens demanded answers the Empire could not provide. Supplies dwindled, essential services failed, and the once infallible presence of the Imperial Guard evaporated. Rumors consumed the population. Some believed Baba Yaga could walk unseen among them. Others whispered that he had infiltrated the highest ranks and would soon bring the final collapse from within. Paranoia consumed every level of society. The Supreme Chancellor ordered the assembly of the Final Council, an emergency gathering of the remaining loyalists, but the invitations went unanswered. The high command had disintegrated. Some fled into exile, others turned to private mercenary forces for protection, but none escaped what followed. One by one they disappeared. No one saw Baba Yaga. No one intercepted his movements. His calling card remained the same, left behind like a signature the Empire could neither prevent nor understand. As the losses mounted, the Empire's few remaining loyal fleets attempted to consolidate power in distant strongholds. They broadcasted desperate calls for assistance, for reinforcement, for the faintest sign of stability. No answers came. The few ships that responded were either destroyed or revealed to have already fallen under human control. The Empire's desperation only deepened their mistakes. Every countermeasure, every redeployment, every last-minute tactic had been anticipated, dismantled before it could be executed. Human colonies that had once barely survived under the Empire's shadow now expanded rapidly into abandoned territories. Their fleets moved unopposed, not through force, but through absence. The Empire no longer contested their expansion. Entire sectors were surrendered without negotiation, without combat. The fear of Baba Yaga had crippled the will to fight more completely than any weapon ever could. The final death knell came when the Supreme Chancellor's own command vessel was found adrift, its crew missing, the ship's logs erased. The last message transmitted from the Chancellor's quarters was a single word: Baba Yaga. No one remained to assume control. The Empire's chain of command disintegrated completely, its authority dissolved in the vacuum left behind. What remained of the Empire fractured into isolated enclaves, each ruled by petty warlords, each terrified that Baba Yaga would find them next. Trade collapsed, borders vanished, and once proud star systems became little more than ghost sectors haunted by the memory of what had been. The Empire, once the most dominant power in the galaxy, had been undone not by invasion, not by armada, but by fear, by a legend it themselves had armed and unleashed. Humanity, once dismissed as an annoyance, now expanded freely across the stars. The humans did not need to raise their fleets or stage grand conquests. They had already won. The galaxy now whispered warnings in place of battle cries. Aliens no longer discussed strategies to defeat humans. They spoke instead of the places Baba Yaga had visited, of the symbols he left behind, of the territories now silently controlled by human hands. The memory of the seminar, once the Empire's proud initiative to eliminate humanity, became a forbidden topic. Those who attended were either dead, missing, or living in exile under assumed identities, hoping to avoid the fate they had seen unfold. Documents were burned, archives erased, recordings purged. The Empire's surviving factions tried to eliminate all traces of what had occurred, as if by destroying the records, they could erase the terror that consumed them.